I always thought mannequins were just props. Nothing more than plastic shells designed to mimic us lifeless, harmless. That was before I brought one into my home. The box arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, larger than I expected, damp from the storm. I had ordered a life-size artist mannequin online to help improve my figure drawing. The reviews were great. Fully posable, lifelike proportions, articulated fingers, perfect for sketch practice. It was meant to be a tool, something inert, something controlled. I remember being so excited, tearing away the tape and peeling back the cardboard like a kid unwrapping a gift. When I pulled it out, a strange chill passed through me, but I laughed it off. It was just a mannequin, after all. No face, just a featureless head. No eyes, no expression, only a smooth plastic surface. I propped it up in the far corner of my studio and spent the next hour adjusting its limbs, finding the right stance, positioning the hands, rotating the shoulders. I remember stepping back and admiring how real it looked in the low light of my workspace. Too real, maybe. The rain tapped gently against the windows as night crept in. That kind of weather usually helps me focus, brings a sort of calm. But not tonight. Tonight the air felt wrong, too heavy. As if something else had entered the room with me. I tried to shake the unease. I turned on my sketch lamp and got to work, glancing up occasionally at the mannequin's pose. But after a while, I started to feel something, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. The kind of feeling that makes your stomach tighten without warning. I told myself it was just late and I was tired. That always seems to be the excuse when the darkness starts whispering. Still, I couldn't help but glance up at it again. And that's when I saw it. Its right arm had moved. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it had shifted upward slightly, almost like it was reaching for me. I froze. My pencil slipped from my fingers and rolled across the desk. My eyes stayed locked on the mannequin. I hadn't touched it since I first posed it. I was sure of that. Absolutely sure. But now its arm was wrong. I stood up, slowly, walked over and adjusted the arm back down, trying to steady my breathing. I even laughed, nervously. Told myself maybe the joints were loose or maybe I had just imagined it. But deep down, I didn't believe that. The rest of the night, I couldn't focus. I didn't even try to sketch anymore. Every time I looked away, even for a moment, I thought I saw something different. The fingers seemed to curl ever so slightly. The head, once facing straight, now angled just a few degrees toward me. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the unease only grew stronger. By the time I went to bed, I had triple-checked the studio door, locking it tight, just in case. Not that I believed a lock would mean anything if the mannequin was actually moving. I tried to fall asleep, listening to the rain and wind outside, but the image of that pale, plastic figure burned behind my eyelids. At around 2 a.m., I awoke suddenly, no noise, no dream, just wide awake with a racing heart. The house was silent. That kind of deep silence where even your breathing feels too loud. And then I heard it, a soft creak on the floorboards. I held my breath, listening. Another creak, then another. Slow, deliberate, as if someone or something was walking down the hallway just outside my room. I sat up in bed, staring at the closed door. I knew I had locked the studio. I knew no one else was here, but those footsteps, they were real. Now in my head, I wasn't dreaming. I couldn't be. Then came the tapping, gentle at first, rhythmic, tap, 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 like fingers, brushing lightly against the wood. It was coming from the other side of my bedroom door. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen in the dark, the covers twisted in my lap, heart pounding against my ribs. The tapping continued, slow and steady, until it suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was louder than the sound itself. I waited, unsure of what would happen next. And then very faintly I heard it, a whisper. Not words exactly, but the suggestion of something spoken, a breath pushed through unseen lips. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight, the pale glow slicing through the dark. I stood up, legs trembling beneath me, and inched toward the door. The hallway beyond was pitch black. I raised my phone to light the way and reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold. I hesitated, my hand hovering just above the metal. I didn't want to open that door. Every instinct screamed at me not to, but I had to know. I turned the knob. The hallway was empty. No mannequin, no intruder. Just the same shadow-soaked corridor I'd walked through 100 times. But as I turned to go back to bed, I noticed something that turned my blood to ice. The window in my room, the one I had locked, was now wide open. The open window stared back at me like a mouth agape in horror. Rain blew in softly with the breeze, pushing the curtains into a slow dance. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. I had locked that window. I remembered doing it before bed, sliding the latch into place with a familiar click. Yet here it was wide open, as if something had entered or left. My instincts screamed, but I forced myself forward. I shut the window and locked it again, this time checking it twice. My fingers trembled as I yanked the curtains closed. Every fiber of my being wanted to get out of the house, but where would I even go at this hour? Besides, I hadn't seen anything. Nothing concrete, nothing provable, just the kind of terror that doesn't leave bruises. Then I heard it again. Not footsteps this time, but the faintest creak like the shifting of weight. I whipped around, flashlight beam darting through the dark, and there it was. Standing just inside the hallway, partially swallowed by shadow, was the mannequin. No mistaking it. No illusion of posture. It was standing upright outside my locked studio, feet planted where no feet should have ever stood. Its featureless face was tilted slightly, angled as though it was observing me with invisible eyes. Its arms hung loose at its sides, one shoulder, higher than the others if it had been in motion and abruptly stopped. I couldn't breathe. My thoughts stuttered and collapsed under the weight of the moment. I had locked that studio. I had secured it. There was no possible way it could have moved, unless it had never really been still in the first place. I took a step back into my room, my legs wobbly beneath me. The mannequin didn't move. It just watched, or seemed to watch silently and possibly still. The kind of stillness that feels like it's coiled, ready to snap into action the moment you blink. Then, slowly, its fingers twitched. It was barely perceptible, but I saw it. One by one, the digits on its left hand curled inward, like it was beckoning me. I stumbled backward and slammed my bedroom door shut. My heart was slamming in my chest, and sweat dripped down the back of my neck despite the cold. I locked the door, then grabbed the nearest piece of furniture, wooden desk chair, and jammed it under the handle. Seconds later, the doorknob rattled, not violently. Not like in movies where the door shakes with force. No, this was slow, precise, like someone testing it, measuring the resistance, learning how it worked. I backed away until I was pressed against the far wall, my phone light bobbing in my shaking hand. The rattling stopped, but then the sound changed, soft tapping, rhythmic again, like fingernails tracing the grain of wood. Tap, tap, tap. "Let me in," came the whisper. My skin turned to ice. The voice wasn't deep. It was hushed, distant, and genderless like a breath funneled through an empty shell. It didn't sound angry. It sounded ... patient. I squeezed my eyes shut. This can't be real. Mannequins don't move. Mannequins don't talk. I kept repeating those phrases like a prayer, but something inside me, something primal, already knew better. Then the whisper came again, this time from closer than the door. "Let me in." I snapped my eyes open. The doorknob was still. The tapping had stopped. But when I glanced at the far end of my room just above the dresser, I saw it. A shadow, faint. A silhouette that didn't belong. It wasn't there before. I was sure of it. It was tall, thin, and still, like something standing just beyond reach of the light. I raised the flashlight toward it. Nothing. The shadow was gone. The room was silent again. And then my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen, expecting maybe an emergency alert or a missed call from anyone, but it was a photo message. No number, just unknown sender. The photo made my stomach drop. It was a picture of me. Not just me now, but me in this exact moment. I was pressed against the wall, phone in hand, terror in my eyes. But in the photo, something else was there. Standing just inches behind me was the mannequin, its head tilted, its hand raised above my shoulder like it was about to touch me. I screamed. I whipped around, slashing the phone's light across the wall. Nothing, but the air it had changed. Colder now. Denser. I checked behind every piece of furniture, every corner, heart hammering like a war drum. Still nothing, but the fear didn't leave. If anything, it grew. Thick, suffocating. Something was in here with me. Something that didn't belong. I stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting in the corner of my room, flashlight in one hand, the other clenching a metal lamp like a weapon. I didn't blink. I didn't even try. I kept staring at the door, listening for the slightest creak, any sound, any breath. But there was nothing. Not until dawn. That's when I finally dared to open the door, phone in one hand, lamp in the other. The hallway was empty. The mannequin was gone. I checked the studio. Door still locked. Still bolted. But when I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. The mannequin was back in the corner, posed exactly how I had first left it, arms down, head straight, silent and lifeless. Like it had never moved, like none of it had ever happened. But I knew better, because as I turned to leave the room, something on the wall caught my eye. There, scratched faintly into the drywall above the mannequin's head, were 3 words. You saw me. I stood frozen in the doorway of the studio, staring at the words scratched into the wall. You saw me. The letters were small and jagged, as if carved by something with no real fingers. My first thought was that maybe I had done it myself, unknowingly, during some kind of sleepwalking episode. But I knew that was a lie. I don't sleepwalk. Never have. Besides, I didn't own anything sharp enough to etch into drywall that cleanly. And even if I did, I wouldn't have done that. I stared at the mannequin. Same neutral pose. Same faceless head. Same stiff limbs. It looked like it had never moved at all, but I knew better now. I felt the wrongness radiating off of it, like a cold heat, a kind of dead gravity that seemed to warp the air around it. I should have called someone. A friend, the police, anyone. But how do you explain that your mannequin is alive and writing messages on your wall? So instead, I did the most human thing imaginable. I tried to normalize it. I dragged the mannequin back into the corner and sat down at my desk, as if resuming some abandoned art project would pull me out of this nightmare. But the air in the room had changed. It no longer felt like my studio. It felt like its room now. Still, I picked up my sketchbook and started drawing not the mannequin, but the corner it stood in. The shadows were deeper there, despite the overhead light. I tried to focus on the angle of the walls, the grain of the floor, anything that would keep me from looking directly at it. Yet even without turning my head, I knew it was changing. I could feel the pose shifting ever so slowly, a shift in weight, a slight tilt of the head, the subtle raising of one arm. I turned quickly, hoping to catch it mid-movement, but it was still, perfectly, maddeningly still. I must have stared at it for 10 full minutes. Breath shallow, eyes wide and dry. But nothing happened. Just plastic silence. Then my phone buzzed. Again, another photo. My blood ran cold. This one was of my sketchbook, the exact drawing I had just started. But in the photo, the corner of the room wasn't empty. The mannequin wasn't in the corner either. The figure in the picture was hunched over, crouched in the exact same spot I had been drawing. Its hands clutched around its knees, its face not blank plastic, but mine. My eyes, my skin, my clothes. The mannequin was drawing me. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. I backed away from the desk, toward the door, heart jackhammering. I couldn't do this anymore. I grabbed a bedsheet from the linen closet, and returned to the studio. Without looking at the mannequin, I flung the sheet over it and pushed it behind an old storage cabinet. Then I closed the door, locked it, and taped over the seam with duct tape, like some primitive attempt at exorcism. I spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself. I watched TV on full volume. I blasted music. I cooked food I didn't eat. But no matter what I did, I felt it, the presence, lingering just behind that door. When night fell, the house turned cold again. My bedroom lights flickered once, then steadied. I piled furniture against my door this time, not just a chair. I stacked a small dresser, my desk, even my mattress was angled in front of it. Overkill, maybe, but I was done pretending I wasn't terrified. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every sound in the house became a threat. Every creak, every shift of wood, every whisper of wind turned into a countdown to something unseen stepping into the room. And then, just after 3 a.m., I heard the crash. Glass. Breaking. It came from the studio. I wanted to ignore it. I really did. But something inside me, some cursed cocktail of fear and defiance, forced me to move. I crawled over the furniture, barricaded, and stepped into the hallway. The house was silent. I approached the studio door, my flashlight trembling in my grip. The duct tape hung loose now, like something had pushed from the inside. My fingers brushed the knob, icy cold, just like before. I took a breath and opened it. Glass crunched beneath my feet. The window in the back wall was shattered, shards glittering on the floor like frozen teeth. The sheet I had wrapped the mannequin in was crumpled in a pile, empty. The mannequin was gone. For a moment, I thought maybe it had jumped. Maybe the nightmare was over. Maybe it was lying broken in the backyard, plastic limbs snapped at impossible angles. But when I looked out the broken window, there was nothing. No mannequin. No movement. Just the wind in the trees, swaying slightly in. The moonlight. Then I heard it again. Tap, 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 from behind me. I spun around. The mannequin was there, standing directly behind my studio desk, one hand raised, fingers curled ever so slightly. Not toward me this time, but toward the sketchbook. It was. Posing again, but this time ... it was drawing. The mannequin's hand was frozen in mid-motion, hovering just above the page. The pencil lay perfectly balanced between its curled fingers. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed in the doorway. My eyes kept flicking between the sketchbook and the mannequin's hand, half expecting it to move again. But it didn't have to. The pencil wasn't there earlier. I stepped forward slowly, crunching glass beneath my shoes with every step. My flashlight beam was weak, now battery dying, but it was enough to illuminate the page. I wish it hadn't. The drawing was of me. But not like a portrait, not even like the mannequin had tried to replicate what I looked like. It was me sitting at my desk, hunched over a sketchbook, face contorted in a mix of fear and exhaustion. The room around me was impossibly detailed. Light bulb, the broken window, even the pattern of the rug beneath my feet. But what chilled me the most wasn't the image of myself. It was what was behind me in the drawing. A second mannequin, tall, taller than the one I owned. Same blank face, but this one had no arms. It was standing directly behind me in the image, its head bent impossibly low, like it was whispering into my ear. I dropped the flashlight. The room went dark. My fingers scrambled across the floor, cutting against the shards of glass as I searched for the light. I found it after a few seconds that felt like hours, and flicked it back on. The mannequin hadn't moved, but I had the feeling, no certainty, that I was no longer alone. I turned and scanned the room, expecting to see another shape, another shadow. But there was nothing, just the walls, the broken window, the heavy silence. Still, something had changed. I felt watched, not by the mannequin in the room, but by something deeper, older, like I had cracked a door open that was never meant to be touched. And now, whatever was on the other side had started watching me back. I'd backed out of the studio, eyes never leaving the mannequin, and pulled the door shut. No lock this time. I didn't see the point. I returned to my bedroom and collapsed onto the floor, too shaken to move. The barricade was still there. At least something was still the way I left it. For hours, I sat in the dim light of my phone screen, searching the internet for explanations, haunted objects, possessed art supplies, cursed dolls. Most of it was nonsense. Stories, folklore, nothing grounded. Nothing that explained how my mannequin could be doing this. But then I found a forum, obscure, one of those deep web-looking corners of the internet that shouldn't exist, but somehow do. There was a thread titled, "Do your drawings draw themselves back?" I clicked it. Most of it was incoherent rambling. People talking about art that changed overnight, paintings that bled, sketches that aged with them, delusions, probably. But one post stood out. It was from 5 years ago by someone named underscore neck underscore. It read, "If you see it move once, that's not the beginning. That's the end of its patience. It only wants one thing. For you to see yourself through its eyes. Once it starts drawing you, you're already inside." Attached was a photo, a mannequin, identical to mine, covered in ash or dirt or some dark substance. Its face, still blank, was turned toward the camera, but the photographer's reflection was visible in the glass behind it. And in the reflection, the mannequin had eyes. I exited the browser, my skin crawling. I wanted to throw the phone, destroy it, delete everything, something. But instead I just stared at the screen, unsure if I had imagined it all. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps on my bedroom door. I didn't move. Then again 3 knocks, louder this time. "Stop," I whispered, though I knew it couldn't hear me. Or maybe it could. The door creaked, but didn't open. I waited. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. No number. Just the words. "Turn around." I couldn't. But then something touched the back of my neck. Cold. Deliberate. Not a breeze. Not my imagination. Fingers. I screamed and dove for the door, knocking over furniture. Kicking drawers aside, I yanked the door open and ran for the front of the house. I didn't grab shoes, keys, nothing. I just ran. The porch light flickered as I passed under it. The night air slammed into my lungs as I bolted down the steps, barefoot, the gravel, slicing into my feet. I didn't stop. Not until I was 3 blocks away, crouched behind a dumpster, gasping for breath. When I finally looked back, the street was empty. No movement. No sound. But in the distance, my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A new photo. It was taken from inside my house, a view of the open front door. And standing, just beyond the threshold, the mannequin. But not posed this time, not still. It was halfway through the door, mid-step. I didn't go back to the house that night. I couldn't. I wandered until dawn, legs aching, solace of my feet torn and bloody. I tried calling people, friends, my sister, even the non-emergency police line, but every time the phone either glitched out or just went straight to static. It was like something was jamming me, like the mannequin wasn't just haunting the house, but had burrowed into everything. At sunrise, I found myself at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. I sat in a booth by the window, wrapped in a scratchy blanket one of the employees gave me. I must have looked insane, disheveled, shaking, blood on my shirt. But they didn't ask questions. They just brought me black coffee and left me alone. And for a while, I started to believe it was over, that maybe the thing only had power at night. Maybe I had escaped it. Until I checked my phone again, another message. This time it wasn't a photo, it was a sketch. A digital image hand-drawn, black ink on white, as if scanned straight from a sketchbook. It showed me exactly as I was now, sitting in the booth. Coffee steaming in front of me, my eyes hollow and terrified. But the detail that broke me, the thing that sent the mug tumbling from my hands, was what stood just outside the diner window in the drawing. The mannequin, head cocked, watching, waiting, I scrambled out of the booth, ignoring the stares of the few customers scattered around. I rushed to the window and yanked back the blinds. Nothing, just the parking lot. But the chill was back, that unbearable stillness pressing against the glass, like something just outside the reach of reality was trying to bleed through. I ran into the bathroom and locked myself in a stall, breath ragged. My thoughts were fracturing, and deep down I knew it wasn't just fear anymore. It was possession. Not of my body, not yet, but of my story. This thing, this mannequin, was replacing me, one sketch at a time. Every image it sent was more than a threat. It was a step. A frame in a film I hadn't agreed to star in. A version of my life being overwritten by something else. Something with plastic hands and no face. I checked the forum again, desperate for anything new. The old user M_NK_N had posted only once more, a follow-up buried deep in the thread. Don't destroy it. That's what it wants. If it's drawing you, it's already seen the end. The only way to stop it is to finish the sketch first. Finish your version, draw yourself, draw it watching. Lock it in the image. I had to go back, not because I was brave. Not because I had a plan, but because I had no other choice. When I reached the house, the sun was beginning to set. The shadows stretched long across the driveway, clawing toward the front steps. I hesitated at the threshold. The door was still wide open. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that feels constructed, built intentionally to conceal something. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The air was heavy, like it hadn't been breathed in for days. The sketchbook was still on my studio desk. I approached slowly, half expecting the mannequin to appear from behind the door, from the corner, from anywhere, but it didn't, not yet. I sat down, flipping, to the last page I had drawn. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to start sketching. Me as I was now at the desk, pencil in hand, eyes sunken. I drew the room behind me, the shattered window, the faint outlines of my own terror. And in the background, I began to draw it, the mannequin. But this time, I wasn't drawing it standing still. I was drawing it watching me through the glass. As I drew, the air in the room shifted, the shadows deepened. The temperature dropped by 10 degrees. My fingers stiffened, but I kept going. The mannequin didn't want this. I could feel its presence tightening, resisting me like a current pushing against the tide. I had to keep sketching. Its hands, long and unnatural, bent wrong. Its head, tilting further than anatomy allowed. The shape of it taller now, almost stretching, changing, becoming more like me. I was sweating, shivering, locked in some surreal dance between creation and erasure. The more I drew, the less I could tell where I ended and it began. Then, behind me, footsteps. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just kept drawing. Faster now. My reflection in the studio window. The angle of the mannequin. The contours of the desk. A cold breath touched the back of my neck. I sketched that too. And finally I signed the drawing with shaky hands. As soon as I lifted the pencil, everything stopped. The air stilled. The shadow shrank. I turned slowly. The mannequin was standing behind me, inches away, arms limp at its sides. But it wasn't moving. Not anymore. Its body was locked in the exact pose I had drawn. Arms loose, head tilted, staring past me, not me. Like it had been captured. I backed away, breathless. The sketchbook on the desk didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt sealed, a trap, a mirror that had frozen something on the other. Sighed. I shut it slowly. Then I noticed something strange. My mannequin, its plastic shell was now marked with something I hadn't noticed before. Faint lines. Drawn into the surface. Sketch marks. Someone else had done this. Before me, I stood there, the sketchbook clutched in my trembling hands, staring at the faint pencil lines etched into the mannequin's surface. They were everywhere on its arms, its chest, down its legs. Thin, layered lines, cross hatches, outlines, as if someone had drawn on it with a practiced hand. But these weren't new. The graphite was old, worn into the plastic itself, like time had tried to erase them but failed. Someone else had sketched this mannequin long before I ever found it. Someone else had brought it to life, and someone else had tried and failed to trap it. That realization hit me like a sickness. This thing had been passed around, traded, resold, each owner thinking they were the first, the only one to witness it move, to hear its whispers. Each believing they could contain it. I wasn't unique. I was next. I'd backed away from the figure, now frozen in my last drawing. But the victory felt hollow. It hadn't shattered. It hadn't burned. It hadn't screamed or twisted into something monstrous. It had simply stopped, which meant it could start again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the living room floor with every light in the house on, the sketchbook beside me, unopened. My thoughts spiraled. What if closing it wasn't enough? What if the thing wasn't inside the pages at all? What if I was? The next morning I made a decision. I wrapped the mannequin in thick cloth and duct tape, piece by piece. Arms, legs, torso, head. Then I shoved it back into the same box it came in and nailed it shut. I used 6-inch screws. I sealed the seams with wax and plastic wrapped in duct tape until it looked like a cursed time capsule. Then I drove, miles out of town, into the woods, far off the main roads, somewhere no one would find by accident. I buried it, 3 feet deep, in a clearing I'll never find again. I didn't mark the spot, didn't take a picture. I just left it there, in the dirt, and told myself it was over. But it wasn't because when I got home, the sketchbook was on my bed. I had left it in the living room. I opened it slowly, expecting to find the last image I drew, but it was blank, every page. Gone. Erased, except for the very last one. There was a new drawing. It wasn't of me. It was of someone else, someone I didn't recognize. A man hunched over in a basement, his face streaked with tears, surrounded by sketchbooks, all filled with identical drawings of a mannequin, the same mannequin. And in the corner of that page, scrawled in sharp, deliberate handwriting, were the words. I tried to bury it, too. I slammed the book shut and threw it into the fireplace, tossing in lighter fluid in every match I had. The flames took it, fast pages curling into blackened spirals, the heat making my skin sting. I watched it burn until nothing but ashes remained. That night, I forced myself to believe it was over. Until 3:17 a.m. Tap, 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 not at the door, at the window. I froze. My bedroom was on the second floor. I didn't move for hours, didn't look. I didn't even breathe too loudly. By morning, there were no signs of anything. No footprints. No open windows. Nothing broken. But on my bedside table, where I kept my pencils, sat a new sketchbook. Brand new. Wrapped in plastic. Untouched. Except someone had written a single word on the cover in pencil. Draw. The air was colder than it should have been. Bitter. Not the kind of chill you feel on your skin, but the kind that creeps beneath your coat and settles deep in your bones. I stood alone at the edge of an abandoned platform, the ground damp beneath. My boots, a threadbare fog, hung low over the train tracks, thick enough to blur the world around me into smudged gray shapes. Above, a single flickering streetlight buzzed weakly, casting trembling shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The last bus home had never arrived. Just vanished from the schedule without a trace. I had been stranded for an hour. When an old man with watery eyes and a sour breath muttered something at the bus stop that got stuck in my head. There's still one way home, he grasped. Midnight train. Only for the dead. I laughed it off. Thought maybe he was crazy, maybe just drunk. But when I checked my watch, it was already 11:47 p.m., and something about his words wouldn't let go of me. And now here I was, at a station I'd never seen before. No signs, no announcements, no timetable. Just an old platform and those whispering tracks that stretched endlessly into the fog. I hadn't meant to come this far down the road, but my feet had taken me here anyway. like they were following some invisible pull. I checked the time again. 11:59. The silence thickened like smoke. Then a sound pierced it low, distant, mournful, a whistle. Not sharp and modern like the ones you hear in the city. This one was old, hollow, like something crying through rusted metal. It seemed to come from the very ground beneath me, rattling the stones under my boots. Then I saw it, the train. It emerged from the fog like a memory dredged from a nightmare. Massive, slow, and covered in decades of grime. The engine hissed with dark steam, and its exterior was streaked with rust like dried blood. Its windows were pitch black, reflecting no light, no glow from inside, no sign of life. The brakes squealed as it pulled into the station, the sound screeching across the tracks like metal screaming. And then, silence. The doors slid open with a reluctant hiss. There was no conductor, no voice, no welcome. Only blackness beyond. The doorway. My breath came out in pale clouds. I should have turned away. I should have walked in the opposite direction and never looked back. But something about that open door called to me. It felt personal, like the train had come specifically for me. I took a step forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, the doors slammed shut behind me, sealing with a finality that echoed through the empty car. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no way to open them. No emergency release. Just cold steel and grimy glass. The train shuddered, then began to move. I was trapped. Inside, the car was dim and deathly quiet. The ceiling lights flickered, intermittently, struggling against the thick darkness that clung to every corner. Dust floated in the air like ash. The floor creaked beneath my steps, and the seats, old, brittle leather, were arranged in pairs along each side, all of them, coated in a fine, untouched layer of dust. It was like no one had ridden this train in decades, or like no one had ever gotten off. The only sound was the low mechanical hum beneath the floor as the train picked up speed, gliding across unseen tracks through an unknowable landscape. I walked slowly, cautiously, deeper into the car, peering down the long aisle. No passengers, no conductor. Not even luggage or trash, or the crumpled remains of someone's commute. Just rows of empty seats, staring blankly ahead. The windows were caked with dirt and filth, so much that I couldn't even see out. Just streaks of smudges and something darker along vertical claw marks scratched deep into the glass. Still, I tried to stay calm. Told myself it had to be some decommissioned line they kept running for emergencies. Maybe this was one of those historical tourist trains. Maybe I was dreaming. Anything was better than admitting the creeping fear threading into my spine. I turned and walked back toward the door I came in through, thinking maybe I could stop the train, maybe I could bang, loud enough for someone outside to hear me. But the moment I touched the door, a jolt ran through my fingertips, like static. It wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, pounded with my fist. Nothing. Just then, the lights flickered violently. A loud hum pulsed through the car, and the shadows on the floor twisted unnaturally. In one brief flash, I thought I saw something move across the seats. A shape, black and slow. I turned sharply, nothing. But then I heard a whisper. Soft, dry, and terrifyingly close. You shouldn't be here. I froze. My heart thudded against my ribs. The voice didn't echo. It surrounded me. And just before the lights flickered off completely, I saw at the far end of the car, just beyond the aisle, a figure. Still, shadowed, watching. Then darkness swallowed everything. The lights didn't come back on. At first, I thought maybe the bulbs had just blown a wiring, maybe a power surge. But then I realized the train was still moving, faster than before. The floor vibrated violently beneath me. A deep mechanical growl echoing through the metal like some sleeping thing had awakened beneath the wheels. I pressed my back against one of the dusty seats, holding my breath. The shadows around me weren't still anymore. They pulsed, swirled like smoke in water, folding and unfurling through the aisle. And beneath the sound of the train's rumble, something else drifted in the murmur of whispers. not loud, not threatening, just wrong. They crawled into my ears like silk threads brushing softly against my thoughts. He doesn't belong here. Still breathing. Still warm. My mouth went dry. I turned on my phone flashlight, the tiny beam cutting a weak circle into the black. It flickered at first, battery half dead, but then steadied. I swept it across the car. Empty seats. Dust motes. Stillness. Then movement. At the far end of the train, near the connecting door, something shifted. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just aware. I raised the light and pointed it down the aisle. A shape. Human-like. Seated. It hadn't been there before. I took a hesitant step forward, my boots crunching against broken glass from under the ceiling. Fixtures. The figure didn't move. Another step. It was slumped forward slightly in the seat, shoulders hunched, head low. I swallowed, my throat burning. "Hey," I called out, my voice barely rising above a whisper. "Are you okay?" No answer. The train jerked slightly, the sound of wheels screeching against the rails slicing through the car like a scream. I steadied myself, keeping the light trained on the figure. One more step. Two. I was close enough now to see the texture of its coat-thick wool, faded black, riddled with mold and dust. Its hands rested on its lap, pale, blue-veined, skin. Like cold wax. I raised the light to its face. God. Its eyes were open, wide, bloodshot, pupils, like pinholes, staring, straight, at me. Its mouth curled upward, slowly, stiffly into a grin that felt more like a wound than expression. Rotting teeth. Gray gums. That smile was the stuff of morgues. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. The whisper returned. "You're the only one who still feels the cold." My legs screamed at me to run, but I stood frozen as the figure slowly lifted its head. Bones cracked. The sound of dry tendons pulling apart echoed in the silent car. It blinked. Once. Slowly. Then it stood. I turned and bolted down the aisle. Behind me, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging, followed, but not like a person running, like something accustomed to chasing. I threw open the connecting door to the next car and slammed it behind me. The new car was darker, colder. The smell hit me like a wall-musty rot, old water, rust, the kind of air that had soaked into fabric for decades. I choked on it as I stumbled forward, looking for any sign of life, any light, any exit. The seats here were even worse, torn open, stuffing spilling like organs onto the aisle. Scorch. Marks streaked the ceiling as if something had once caught fire and been snuffed out by force. But what truly broke me were the scratches. On the walls. On the floor. Deep and erratic. Long, clawed trails etched into every surface. They weren't from fingers. They were from nails. I shone my light on the side wall and recoiled. Words had been carved into the metal, messy and desperate. I got off but never left. "They'll take your breath before they take your soul. Don't sit down. They only see you when you're still." The last one made my blood run colder than it already was. And that's when I heard the sound again. Behind me, dragging feet, closer, slower, breathing not labored, not panicked, but wet and rattling, like lungs filled with fluid. The connecting door behind me creaked. I aimed my flashlight, but the door was gone. Not closed, not damaged, just not there anymore. As if the train had rearranged itself while I wasn't looking. I turned, heart hammering against my ribs, and started moving forward. Not running now. Moving slow, carefully, because if what those words said was true, they only saw you when you were still. I kept walking, even as the cold crept deeper into my limbs. Even as the shadows thickened behind me like smoke chasing a flame. But it didn't matter how far I moved. Because up ahead in the next row of seats, there was another figure. This, one taller, its back to me. It turned its head. Not slowly this time. Snapped. The sound of a spine twisting at the wrong angle. Its eyes met mine, and this time it spoke, not a whisper. A voice wet and cracked filling the empty train with its rasp. It's too late to leave now. You've been counted. I didn't ask what it meant. I didn't want to know. You've been counted? Those words followed me as I turned and ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Every instinct screamed that if I saw that thing's face again, I'd lose my mind. The train groaned beneath me like something ancient, shifting in its sleep. I stumbled through the aisle, past ruined seats and shredded upholstery. The lights flickered overhead, revealing glimpses of twisted shadows clinging to the walls like spiderwebs. Each step felt heavier than the last. Like something was pulling at me, trying to drag me down. I slammed through the door to the next car. This one was colder, but somehow quieter. The humming of the train's engine was gone, replaced by something far worse. Breathing, not mine, not human. Slow, guttural, hungry. The lights were dimmer here, flickering every few seconds, but never long enough to see clearly. It was like the darkness knew how to stay just out of reach. I kept my phone's flashlight raised, the small cone of light sweeping over the dusty floor. That's when I noticed the shoes. Pairs of them, neatly placed beneath every seat. Boots, loafers, heels, old, scuffed, covered in dust. Every seat had a pair of shoes beneath it, but the seats themselves were empty. It didn't make sense. I stopped walking. My heart was pounding too fast to ignore. My throat was dry and I could barely breathe. I crouched and reached out toward one of the shoes just to prove to myself they were real. Before my fingers touched it, a hand slid out from under the seat. Gray, thin, bone-white nails. It grabbed my wrist. I screamed, fell backward. My flashlight hit the floor and rolled away, casting wild, spinning shadows through the car. In that flickering chaos, shapes began to rise from beneath the seats, one after another. Figures crawling, out slowly, deliberately, their movements jerky and unnatural, like they'd forgotten how to be human. Some dragged themselves by their arms, some staggered upright like drunks. All of them turned their hollow eyes toward me at once. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The whispers returned, this time, louder. Dozens of voices, all saying the same thing over and over. You're on the manifest now. You've been counted. No one gets off once they've been counted. The next door was only a few feet away, but the car had begun to shift walls, warping slightly, like the metal itself was breathing. My hand gripped the handle and yanked it open. This car was different. This one was filled with mirrors, hundreds of them. No seats, no lights, just mirrors lining every surface. On the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor. Even the door slammed shut behind me and became reflective. And in every reflection, I saw myself. Or at least, I thought it was me. Each mirror version of me stood differently. One with eyes hollow and dark. Another with blood dripping from the mouth. Another with something standing directly behind. Then, I turned around. Nothing. Back to the mirrors. Now all the reflections were turned toward me, facing me fully. And they were moving when I wasn't, blinking when I didn't, smiling when I was terrified. I backed away, breathing shallow, chest tight. My body trembled. One of the reflections raised its hand and pressed it against the mirror, and on my side, cold glass pushed back. Then the reflections began to walk. Toward the surface of the mirrors, I ran, slamming into the next door just as the first hand reached out from the glass. The sound it made wasn't like shattering, it was like the mirror split open, like skin tearing and something crawled through it. I didn't look back. I threw myself into the next car and collapsed. This one was still quiet, deceptively peaceful. The hum of the train returned, low and steady beneath me. The car looked normal, cleaner, even lit with soft yellow lights. I thought maybe this was the exit. Maybe this was where people got off. Then I saw them, the passengers, dozens of them, all seated, all staring straight ahead, silent, still. I didn't want to look at their faces, but I did. Their eyes were open, their mouths slightly parted, and none of them were breathing. The train hissed suddenly, the car shaking like it had hit a switch in the tracks. And one by one, the passengers began to turn their heads toward me. No sound, just the slow creaking of necks and the crunch of dried cartilage. Their lips moved in perfect unison. And I heard the words again, in my own voice this time. You've been counted. I stood frozen, surrounded by corpses that wouldn't stop staring. Dozens of lifeless eyes pinned me in place, their gaze heavier than any hand. The passengers sat perfectly still, slumped in their seats as though death had caught them mid-commute, but their heads were turned toward me, every one of them, and their mouths twitched like they were trying to remember how to speak. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stand there and listen to that phrase echo in my skull. You've been counted. Suddenly, every light in the car blinked off, pitch black. Then a snap. The overhead lights flicked back on, dim and yellow, and I realized something had changed. The seats were empty now. All of them. Every single one. My heart dropped into my stomach. I took a shaky step back and my heel struck something soft. I turned around slowly. They were standing behind me, all of them, packed tightly into the aisle, their heads bowed, their bodies swaying slightly as if they were breathing in unison. But they weren't breathing. Not really. I stepped back again, pressing against the cold steel wall at the end of the car. My hand found the door handle and I pulled, locked. Another step back and they moved with me. Not aggressively. Not fast. Just a step forward, like dancers in a funeral procession. I turned and slammed my fist against the door, yanking the lever, praying something would give way. Clunk. The door unlocked and burst open. But instead of another train car, I saw stairs. Rust-covered and narrow, descending into darkness. A maintenance area? A crawl space? No time to think, I dove through and slammed the door shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me. I flicked my flashlight back on, the narrow beam bouncing off steel walls and oil-stained pipes. The air down here was thick, damp, metallic, laced. With the scent of something long dead, I moved carefully, ducking beneath low-hanging beams, stepping over rusted tools and old crates. The train's constant vibration vibrated through the solace of my shoes. I was beneath the passengers now, beneath whatever they were. It was tight, claustrophobic. The ceiling hunched low, forcing me to crouch as I moved. After what felt like hours in that metal warren, I found the door. Not a hatch, not another crawl space, a proper door. It was made of dark wood. And carved into it, etched crudely by hand, were 4 words, all passengers are accounted. I hesitated, but something was behind me. I could feel it breathing down my neck, cold and ancient. I twisted the doorknob and slipped inside. The room beyond was impossibly large, larger than the train should have allowed, like a chapel carved into steel. Candlelight flickered along the walls, but there were no flames, just dim glows hovering. In midair, shelves lined the walls filled with strange trinkets, broken watches, charred photos, rusted wedding bands, all labeled with names, ages, dates of death, a manifest of the forgotten. In the center of the room was a desk-long wooden, warped from age. Behind it sat something that looked human. Almost. Its skin was gray and tight, pulled across its face like parchment. Its eyes were milky white, lips blackened and split, and yet it smiled. Passenger 237, it rasped, voice like sandpaper scraping against glass. I froze. That's you, it said. You're late. I shook my head. This was a mistake. I'm not supposed to be on this train. It blinked slowly, then reached beneath the desk and pulled out a large, tattered ledger. The cover was stitched together with what looked like hair. Human hair. The creature licked its thumb and flipped the pages, muttering names under its breath. Emily Darnell, drowned. Marcus Cole, burned. Isaac Wren, found in pieces. And now, you, It stopped and ran a bony finger down the page. Name, unknown, it said. Cause of death, in progress. My skin crawled. You've boarded the train, it hissed. You've walked its halls. You've spoken to its passengers. You've seen the faces. It leaned in closer, and I could smell the rot wafting from its throat. That makes you ours. No, I said. I never agreed. I never bought a ticket. I just got on. Its grin widened. That's the only way anyone ever gets here. No one buys passage. They earn it. It snapped the ledger shut, the sound echoing like a coffin lid slamming. Behind me, the door opened on its own, and I heard footsteps again. Not many, just one. Slow, deliberate, coming for me. You can't leave now, the thing behind the desk whispered. You've already been remembered. The lights flickered, and then I saw it, standing in the doorway. The figure from earlier, the one who whispered, the one who stared. Only now it was closer, clearer, and it had my face. It wore my face. Not like a twin, not even like a mirror. This thing was wearing my likeness like a mask stretched over bone. My same nose, same jawline, but wrong. The skin was too pale, the smile too wide, the eyes dead, hollow, no soul behind them. I stumbled back toward the desk, the strange ledger now glowing faintly under the candleless lights. My back hit the wall, and the room pulsed with cold. The thing with my face didn't move. It just stood there, watching me like a vulture circling. Its own corpse. What the hell is that? I whispered. The old conductor, that's what he was, leaned forward from behind the desk, grinning. Every soul who boards the midnight train leaves a part of themselves behind, he said. Some leave fear, others leave regret. But the ones who refuse to surrender, they leave something more dangerous. He gestured toward the figure. You left behind the version of yourself that should have died. And now it wants its turn. My skin crawled. I didn't die. I'm still alive. For now, he said simply. But you stepped aboard. And that counts for more than breath. This train doesn't care what you believe. It only cares what you deserve. The door behind my double slammed shut. It was just me, the conductor, and the imitation now. It took one slow step forward. Its bare feet dragged slightly, as if walking hurt it. But with every step it took, I felt weaker. Like something inside me was unraveling, memories slipping through cracks, identity melting at the edges. My double tilted its head, mocking the way I'd flinch. The way I'd stutter, it was studying me. I want off this train, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It trembled with something alien. There has to be a way out. There is, the conductor said. One car. Just one. At the front. My eyes shot toward him. Then take me there. He shook his head. No one can take you. You have to make it. If you do, the train lets you go. If not, you become part of it. The thing with my face took another step forward. I bolted out the side door into another tight corridor that hadn't been there before. The walls shrank around me, narrow, suffocating, the air thick and electric. The light from my phone barely worked anymore, glitching and sputtering like it too. I was terrified. Behind me, footsteps, not running, just coming. No matter how fast I moved, I crashed into the next car, slamming the door behind me, then locked it with shaking hands. This one was different again. Completely empty, but this time the seats weren't made of leather or plastic. They were wooden pews, and above each seat was a photo. Old, black and white, like a funeral collage. All the faces were blank, except for one, mine, burned at the edges, half my face curled away in ash, but unmistakably me. My photo hung over the last pew. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, head spinning. I didn't know what was real anymore. Maybe I had died. Maybe this was the in-between, a limbo in motion. The train began to tilt, slightly at first, then more, like it was climbing some impossible slope. I grabbed onto a pew as the angle steepened, holding on as loose objects began sliding. Backward. Somewhere below, metal groaned, screamed. Then the train slammed forward with a violent jolt. The lights went out again, This time they didn't come back on. I waited in the black, barely breathing, and then tap, tap, tap. The door behind me, the one I'd locked. I held still. Then a whisper, my own voice, but distorted, broken, like a recording slowed to the point of decay. You're already gone, dot, dot, dot. The door handle began to turn. I didn't wait. I climbed to my feet and ran, pushing through the next door, deeper into the train. This final car looked like no part of any train I'd ever seen. No seats. Just a long, metallic hallway, covered in pipes and blinking red lights. And at the far end a mirror, large, gleaming. But something was wrong with the reflection. I stood in the middle of the car, breathing heavily, sweat pouring down my back. My heart thudded like a war drum. I looked into the mirror. It didn't show the hallway, it showed a hospital room. A flat line on a monitor, a pale body on a bed, my body. A woman crying into her hands beside me. Machines beeping wildly. The time stamp in the corner of the mirror's surface ticked toward midnight. 11 hours 59 minutes and 32 seconds. 11 hours 59 minutes and 47 seconds. 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. 12 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. The image flickered. My reflection smiled back, but I wasn't smiling. It raised its hand and pointed at me. And from behind, I heard the final whisper. The train only stops for the dead. The mirror fractured. Not shattered, fractured. Long, spiderweb cracks rippled across the glass as if something on the other side was trying to claw its way through. My reflection, that thing wearing my face, smiled wider, twisting its mouth far past anything human. I backed away, the cold metal floor creaking under my weight. Behind me I felt it again. The presence, my copy, my shadow. The version of me that never got off the train. I am still alive, I whispered, as if saying it aloud would protect me. You can't take me. You're just a nightmare. I chose to live? A low chuckle echoed through the car. It wasn't mine, but it might have once been. You didn't choose, the voice said, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. You wandered. That's what everyone does before they die. Suddenly the train jerked. The lights above flickered red, and the hallway tilted sharply to one side. I slammed into the wall, scraping my arm against the rusted pipe. Blood trickled. Down, warm and real. It grounded me, reminded me I still had flesh, still had breath, still had time. The mirror at the end of the car began to pulse like a heartbeat in glass. From within it, fog spilled out, curling across the floor like smoke from an ancient fire. And then, through the cracks, hands emerged, dozens of them. Pale, twisted, reaching, grabbing, each one clutching scraps of clothing, tags with names burned into them, hospital bracelets, rusted jewelry, trophies of the dead. The hands reached. For me, pulling themselves through the glass. I ran. The train began to collapse around the walls, warping inward, groaning like tortured metal. Doors slammed shut ahead of me, behind me. The lights popped one by one, plunging the corridor into strobing darkness. With every flicker, I saw more of them, figures watching me. Reflections in glass where there shouldn't have been any. All of them versions of me drowning, me bleeding, me hanging, me burning, me cold and still in a hospital bed. The whispers grew louder, chanting now, rhythmic, ritualistic. You've been counted. You've been counted. I threw my shoulder against the last door at the end of the car. It didn't budge. I screamed and pounded it again and again until finally it burst open, sending me tumbling into silence, a platform. But not like the one I boarded. This one was endless, covered in ash. Empty ticket stubs drifted down from a ceiling I couldn't see. Faint echoes of whistles cried out in the distance. A rusted sign above flickered to life with a buzz. Last stop, nowhere. I turned around and the train behind me had vanished. No tracks, no engine, just fog. Thick, churning, endless fog. Something was in there, still watching, waiting. I stepped forward. not knowing if I was walking toward freedom or deeper into death. And then I saw it, a figure in the fog. Not the conductor, not my double. Her, the woman from the hospital mirror, the one crying by my bedside. She looked right at me. Her eyes red, swollen, tired. Mom? I said, the word catching in my throat. She didn't answer, but she reached out her hand, not toward me, through me, behind me, to something I couldn't see. I turned slowly. There, standing in the fog, was my reflection again, but now it was wearing my hospital gown. For cords trailed from its arms. A jagged scar traced down its chest. Its eyes weren't hollow anymore. They were sad. Like it didn't want to be here either. The train whistle cried again, this time closer. It was coming back. My reflection, my death held out its hand. I don't belong here, I said. It nodded. Then it stepped backward into the fog. And vanished. Just like that. The whispers stopped. The fog thinned, and I was alone. A soft breeze stirred the ashes around my feet. Somewhere above me, a pale light broke through the clouds. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in a hospital bed, beeping, monitors, bleach-scented air, doctors shouting, my mom holding my hand, sobbing. They told me I'd flatlined for almost 3 minutes. 3 minutes gone. 3 minutes dead. I didn't tell them about the train. I didn't tell them I'd met myself in the dark. I didn't tell them I saw what waits for all of us when the last ride arrives. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I hear it again. That whistle, low, mournful, calling, and I remember. What the conductor said, once you've been counted, the train always comes back. It was supposed to be a simple drive home. The rain had been falling for hours thick, endless sheets that made the road look like a river of slick obsidian. My wipers swiped back and forth uselessly, barely keeping up with the storm. I squinted. Through the foggy windshield, the road ahead twisting through the dense forest like a serpent. The clock on my dashboard flickered 12:03 a.m. Too late, too tired. But I was almost home. That's when the headlights appeared, too fast, too close. Blinding, coming right at me. I swerved on instinct. The wheel yanked out of my grip. My tires lost traction on the slick asphalt. The world spun sideways in a blur of motion and noise. Screeching, crashing, glass shattering, and then nothing. Silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer on the road. I was in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, white and clinical. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. My body ached. My ribs felt bruised, my head throbbed, and my throat was dry, like I hadn't spoken in days. A doctor walked in, clipboard in hand and a smile on his face. "Ah, you're awake," he said gently. "How are you feeling?" I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my side. What happened? The crash. Did they find the other driver? He blinked, his expression faltering. Crash? The accident, I said. There was a car. I swerved. I think I flipped. He glanced at his chart, then back at me. You were found unconscious. At home. No crash. No vehicle damage. Paramedics said you were on your couch when they arrived. I stared at him, stunned. No, that's impossible. I was driving. I hit something. I remember the impact. He offered a calm, practiced smile, the kind doctors wear when they don't believe you, but won't say it out loud. Sometimes. The mind can fabricate trauma during episodes of stress or loss of consciousness. Memory can be unreliable. But I knew what I felt. I could still hear the twist of metal, still feel the pressure of the seatbelt bruising my ribs. I wasn't imagining it. Later, my sister visited. She hugged me like I'd been away for years, tears in her eyes. You scared us. You just collapsed. We thought you were gone. I looked at her in disbelief. Didn't the police come? Did anyone find my car? There was no car. You've been in bed for 2 days. You were found in your house locked from the inside. They all said the same thing. No one remembered a crash. No one saw it happen. No one found a wreck. But I remembered. And when they finally discharged me the next day, I stepped into the sun and felt a strange, dizzying disconnect. The world seemed thinner. Like I was looking through old glass wavy, distorted. The people around me moved too slow. Sounds echoed strangely in my ears. I drove straight to the place it happened, where I knew it happened. The forest road looked the same. The same winding curves, the same overhanging trees, now dripping water from the storm. I slowed as I approached the bend, bracing for something. There was nothing. No tire marks. No broken branches. No shattered glass. It was like it had never happened. But I knew this was it. I parked and got out, my shoes sinking slightly into the muddy roadside. I scanned every inch of the area with growing desperation. And then I saw it, something half buried in the muck. A sharp sliver of glass. I crouched down and pulled it free. It was from a windshield, jagged and dirty. My car's make and model logo etched faintly into the corner. I wasn't crazy. I had proof. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, relief rising, ready to call someone, to show someone. But it wasn't a call. It was a message. From an unknown number. You weren't supposed to survive. I stood there, frozen, the glass shard cutting into my hand. The woods around me fell deathly silent. No wind, no birds. Just that message burning into my mind. I turned slowly, scanning the empty road, the shadowed tree line. Nobody was there. But I could feel it. Something was watching me. I couldn't stop thinking about the message. You weren't supposed to survive. I drove home from the crash site with my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The glass shard wrapped in a rag and tossed onto the passenger seat, like it might burn me if I looked at it again. Every so often, I glanced at my rearview mirror, expecting headlights to appear from nowhere, expecting someone or something to follow. But the road behind me remained empty. At home, I locked the door and pulled every curtain closed. It was still daylight, but the shadows in my apartment felt long and heavy. I tossed the shard into a drawer and opened my laptop. If no one was going to believe me, I had to find someone who would. I typed the message into a search bar. You weren't supposed to survive. Dozens of results popped up: forums, threads, Reddit posts. All stories, some similar, some much worse. I survived the fall, but everyone said I was never there. Woke up in the hospital. No one remembers the fire. I died. I know I did, but I'm still here, and something's watching. One thread in particular caught my attention. It was titled "The Dead Roads. When you cheat death, it comes looking." I clicked it. The post was long, but every word felt like it was written just for me. The writer described strange accidents that left no evidence. Survivors who woke up with memories no one else shared. They all received messages afterward cryptic. Warnings, strange dreams, and eventually disappearances. The final post by the original poster read, "If you're reading this and it's happened to you, get out. Leave. Don't go back to where it happened. Don't try to prove it. You didn't survive by accident. It wants balance." I leaned back in my chair, goosebumps running down my arms. I had gone back. I had picked up the glass. I had seen something, and now it knew. A sudden knock at the door made me flinch so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. 3 slow knocks. I stared at the door, my mouth dry. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. The buzzer never rang. No footsteps had come up the stairs. Another knock closer this time. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone. But my screen flickered and died before I could dial. I pressed the power button again. Nothing. I crept to the peephole and looked through. No one. I held my breath. Waited. Just silence. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty. But sitting at my feet was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, typed in the same font as the message on my phone. "You should have stayed dead." My stomach twisted. I slammed the door shut and backed away. This wasn't just in my head. I needed help. I went to the police the next morning. I told them about the crash, the glass, the messages. I even brought the shard with me. They were polite, but I could see the same look in their eyes, confused concern. The kind you give someone who's either lying or broken. They said they'd look into it, that they'd check the area again. But just as I turned to leave, one of the older officers motioned me over quietly. He had a long scar on his cheek and eyes that looked too tired for their age. I heard your story, he said, low enough that no one else could hear. And I believe you. My heart leapt. You do? He nodded slowly. You're not the first. What do you mean? He opened a drawer and handed me a manila folder worn. Its label faded. Inside were photocopies of missing persons reports. All the victims claimed they'd survived crashes or near-death experiences no one else remembered. Some said they saw things in mirrors. Others mentioned being watched. Each one disappeared within weeks. He looked at me grimly. They call it the dead loop. It's like you slipped through something, somewhere you weren't supposed to go. And now something wants to fix it. Fix it how? He didn't answer. He just said, don't go back there again. Don't let it know you're looking. But it was too late. That night, as I tried to sleep, I saw it again in the reflection of my bedroom window, a figure, faint and pale, standing behind me, watching, and on the glass, written in fog, 4 chilling words, balance must be restored. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in the reflection tall, unmoving, with hollow eyes that pierced through the dark. It wasn't just in the mirror. I began to see it elsewhere too, faint silhouettes. In the glossy screen of my turned-off TV, the dark reflection in a puddle outside my building. Even the gleam of the kitchen window at night. Always there. Always watching. I tried covering the mirrors, every reflective surface. I taped newspapers. Over the windows, draped bedsheets over anything that might shine. It didn't help. The presence wasn't gone. It was inside now. That morning I received another message. Not a text. A voice memo. The recording was barely a few seconds long, but it chilled me to the core. It was my voice panicked, ragged screaming. For help, then the sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, my own voice gasping. Fading, and then silence. I hadn't recorded that. I played it back again, but the second time it was different. A whisper. Come back to where it ended. I threw the phone across the room, heart racing. When I picked it up, the message was gone. Like it had never existed. I decided to go back to the crash site one last time, not to tempt fate, not to chase answers, but to end it. I didn't know how, but something inside me whispered that if I didn't face it now, I wouldn't have the chance later. The road was just as I remembered it. Silent, gray, soaked in a thin mist that clung to the trees like cobwebs. My breath fogged the air as I stepped out of the car. Nothing moved. No wind, no birds. Time felt slower here, like I had stepped outside of it. I walked to the curve. The place where my car had spun out, where the phantom lights had come from the fog, there was nothing. No broken glass, no skid marks. But something caught my eye half buried. In the dirt, a mirror. Small, like the side view mirror of a car, cracked down the center. I picked it up cautiously. My reflection looked back at me, warped, distorted, but then it blinked. I blinked, but my reflection didn't. I dropped the mirror, heart hammering in my chest. But the image lingered even after the mirror lay face down in the dirt. And then the air shifted. The forest around me grew silent, too silent. The light dimmed. Fog poured in, thick and cold. Then I saw them, figures stepping through the trees, some limping, some hunched over, some crawling, all pale, all with hollow eyes. They surrounded me in a wide circle, never speaking, just watching. And in their center, the figure, the one from my mirrors, tall, twisted. Its face was almost mine, but wrong, stretched, hollowed. It stepped forward. You don't belong here, it whispered. You never did. I didn't ask for this. I shouted. I didn't mean to survive. Its head tilted. Exactly, but you did. And now you must return. Suddenly, my chest burned like something inside me was being pulled out. My knees buckled, the ground spinning. The figure reached out a hand. "You're the tear in the pattern. The world must be stitched shut." I screamed, but no sound came. The forest was gone. The figures vanished. Only the mirror remained floating. In the void, reflecting not just me, but everything I feared. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was sitting in my car engine running, dashboard glowing, dimly parked at the side of the same winding road. The fog still lingered, thick as ever, but the clock on my dashboard blinked, 3:07 a.m. My hands gripped the wheel. My clothes were damp, mud on my shoes. The cracked mirror sat on the passenger seat like it had been placed there deliberately. Had it all been a hallucination? A dream? No, it was real. Too real. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, but I did. Unknown? Number. You're drifting. Make a choice. Beneath the message was an attachment, a map. But it wasn't like any map I'd ever seen. The roads were twisted, looping into themselves. Landmarks marked with unsettling names. Dead Loop, Echo Hollow, Mirror's End. Mile 0. My location was marked with a pulsing red dot. And slowly, it was moving. I didn't touch the accelerator. The car began rolling on its own, turning back onto the road, following a path I hadn't chosen. Panic surged through me. I stomped the brake, nothing. Pulled the wheel, it resisted. The forest blurred past the windows, faster and faster until the outside world was a smear of shadows and trees. Then, a road sign flashed by, just one word on rusted metal. Remember. I screamed, grabbing the wheel with all my strength. The car jerked, screeched, and came to a sudden stop. I gasped for air, heart slamming against my chest. Everything was silent again. I looked out the windshield. A long stretch of cracked asphalt lay ahead. On either side, telephone poles leaned like broken fingers into the sky. No signs of life. And in the rearview mirror fog, but not just fog. Figures moved. Within it. Slowly, purposefully, coming closer. I slammed the car into drive and hit the gas. Tires squealed as I sped forward. My headlights cut through the gloom like blades, and for a moment, I felt like I could outrun it. But the road didn't end. I drove for what felt like hours, no. Towns, no intersections, no landmarks. The same warped trees passed again and again. Then the radio crackled. White noise. I hadn't touched it in months. It shouldn't have even been on. But behind the static voices, my voice, pleading, screaming. No, I want to live. I didn't ask for this. I reached out to turn it off, but the moment I touched the dial, the static dropped away and a voice replaced it. You died that night. The steering wheel twisted under my hands. The car veered off the road, crashing into the dirt. Smoke hissed from the hood. I climbed out, dizzy, heart racing. The headlights flickered, dimmed and illuminated a figure standing on the road. The same one, closer now. It raised a hand and pointed at me, then whispered, "This is the in-between. You don't belong in either world." I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away from that thing, from the truth it kept whispering into the cracks of my mind, that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I had died. The forest closed in around me again, but it wasn't the same forest. The trees were twisted, gnarled things, as if they had been burned and never regrew properly. Their branches clawed at the air like skeletal fingers. The moon overhead flickered like a dying light bulb, casting everything in an eerie, stuttering glow. Behind me, I could still hear the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and wrong. Too heavy for something so still. Too soft for something so close. I stumbled into a clearing. A familiar one, a smashed vehicle, sat there. My vehicle. The windshield was shattered. The driver's side caved in. Dried blood smeared the steering wheel. My blood. I knew it the second I saw it. This was where it had happened. My accident. Except I was standing there, looking at it, alive, or ... was I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't expect a signal, but to my shock, the home screen lit up. But there was no clock, no icons, only a black background, and a single message glowing on the screen. Return. The moment I read it aloud, everything shifted. The forest twisted around me, folding in on itself. I blinked and I was no longer in the woods. I was in a hospital room. The same white walls, same humming machines. But this time, no one was there. The bed was empty. And I saw something that made my blood freeze. A heart monitor still running, beeping steadily. But no patient. Then I saw the clipboard. Patient. My name. Status. Comatose condition. Critical prognosis. Grim, I stumbled. Backward. No, I whispered. I woke up. I was fine. A voice answered from behind me. No, you only thought you did. I spun around. The shadow was back, but now it was clear, more defined. It looked like me, but not quite. Slightly off. The eyes were too empty, the smile too wide. It stepped closer. You survived in your head, not in reality. That road took you. Death took you. But I left the hospital. I went home. It shook its head. You think you did, but you're still lying in that bed, brain flickering in and out. You made this world, this echo to hold on to something, but your time is running out. It reached into its coat and pulled out something shiny, the shard of glass, from the crash. Blood still smeared along the edge. Finish it, it said, placing it in my palm. Accept it. I wanted to throw it away, to scream. But when I looked down at the shard, I saw something else in its reflection. My body, lying in the wreck, unmoving, lights flashing behind. EMTs working over me, my eyes open and glassy. I had died that night. Everything since then, waking up, the hospital, going home, the messages, the forest had all been a limbo. A fragile illusion created by a mind refusing to let go. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, then why let me remember? The figure stepped back, so you could choose. I stood there in the white hospital room, the shard of glass cold in my palm. The figure myself, or some twisted version of it, watched silently from the shadows. There was no more running, no more pretending. The truth was laid bare now, undeniable. I was dead, or at least I was supposed to be. A coma, the doctors had said on the chart, but what if even that wasn't real? What if I had died on that road and everything that followed? Was just my soul refusing to move on? The glass shimmered strangely in my hand, not just a reflection, memories. I saw flashes of my life ripple across its surface. My childhood bedroom. My mother's warm smile. My dog wagging tail. College. Friends. A birthday cake. A kiss I never got to say goodbye for. Moments. All of them ... fragments. And then I saw the crash again. The way my car spun, headlights blinding me. The other vehicle vanishing into the mist before impact. The windshield shattering. My body breaking. The scream caught in my throat. And then silence. The moment of death. Only I had clawed my way out, refused to accept the end. Built a ghost of a life in a place between life and death. You made this world because you were afraid, the figure said, voice calm. But fear doesn't stop the end. It only prolongs the suffering. What happens if I let go? I asked, barely a whisper. It stepped forward and raised a hand, not in threat, almost like a gesture of comfort. Peace, truth, the next step, whatever it is, ... It's not this. I looked down at the shard. The final message from my phone echoed in my mind. Your time is almost up. I was never meant to return. I was meant to move on. I closed my eyes and gripped the glass tightly in both hands. Not to hurt myself, but to let it go. I dropped it. The shard hit the floor and shattered into nothing. And with it, the walls. Around me dissolved. There was no pain, no fear, just light. Warm golden light that washed over me like the sun after a long storm. I felt weightless, as if every burden, every shadow, every whisper that had haunted me was finally gone. I was standing in the middle of a vast, endless field. Grass swaying, the wind soft. A distant melody on the breeze faint but familiar, and in the distance I saw them. My grandfather, who'd passed when I was young, a childhood pet bounding through the tall grass. Faces I'd long forgotten. They smiled, welcoming, no questions, no judgment. I took a step forward, and for the first time since the crash, I didn't feel afraid. Far away, in a quiet hospital room, the heart monitor beside my bed let out a steady beep, then flatlined. The doctors moved quickly, but it was already over. The chart was updated one final time. Patient, redacted, time of death, 3:44 a.m., cause, cardiac arrest. Outside, the rain had stopped, the sky beginning to turn pale with the coming dawn. And in the trees near the road where the crash had happened, a cold wind stirred the leaves. But this time there were no whispers, only silence.